All right, troops, how's it going? How's it going? Pure ultra mentalness here. We're going to go up, so we're going to keep this dynamic. We're going to keep this mobile. It's out in the streets. I can't get that to stay up. My nose is that big as well, and I can't get. It's all slippy because it's one of these silky Italian scarves. I'm that bloody old that my ultra scarf actually comes from Italy, 1999. I got that thing. It's an Atalanta scarf before any of the top boys, the ultras just now were even. But this hood as well. It's absolutely roasting. It's an early spring day, but my God, it's too warm for all this kind of gear to go. And it's a chafing of my allergies. It's been sitting on the shelf for years, this scarf, so the dust is getting in my face and all that. It's getting to my sinuses and stuff like that. Can you see in the first floor there behind me, big Palestine flag up in that first floor window, and that's the Celtic Ultras, that's the Green Brigade having a final insult to Rangers, because of course this is Dunerne Street that I'm standing on. Any good blue nose will know that. We had St Patrick's Day yesterday. This is the 18th of March, and of course that is Burbank Day. Rangers playing their final match, arguably playing their final match, debatably, at Burbank on the 18th of March 1876, 150 years ago today. Now, was it though? Was that the final match they played at Burbank? It was a 0-0 with Clydesdale. Was our final match of the 1875-76 season. This red tournament, these red tournaments here, this lovely row of Glasgow tournaments, that would be like, as you're heading up towards Great Western Road there, that would be the right wing if you're attacking the Great Western Road end. At Burbank, the stadium was over, or the ground was over that side. It was Rangers' first enclosed ground. We only played here for that one season, 1875-1876. I think, from what I remember, I wasn't there, I just mean, from what I remember from the Wikipedia page I looked up this morning, I think we probably played a maximum of like 5 or 6 games here in that one season, because it was before the time of the league, the league title. The league championship didn't start, of course, until 1890-91 season when we shared it with Dumbarton. But this was the last time Rangers played at a home venue north of the river, was the season we had here at Burbank. And this whole area that I'm walking down just now was owned by, I think it was the Campbells of Blythswood. We'll come back to them later on. And this is like Great Western Road up there behind me, and West Princes Street down there behind me now. Between those two streets, right the way along here, it was all parkland, it was all playing fields, it was all drill grounds for the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. I think one of the Campbells of Blythswood was a founder member of the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. And eventually, just at the end of the 19th century, they started building this up with all these beautiful tenements that get sold off. But there was like really significant historic cricket matches and rugby matches played here. Intercity rugby matches between Edinburgh and Glasgow, and it was off of, he says with perfect English, Glasgow Accies rugby team that we leased Burbank for a season, and we only played 3 matches in that entire season that you recognise now as properly competitive, and that was the 3 Scottish Cup games that we played. The first one was against the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. Now the ground's here behind where I am now. The ground was in this block here, and it says that it butted onto the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers drill hall. Now, I wonder if that kind of significant looking building there, which I think used to host Scottish Ballet, I'm not sure. I think that used to be their HQ, maybe it still is. But I don't know if that used to be the drill hall of the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers, probably talking complete bunkum there. But this was definitely this area here up to, see the street behind me there, going down behind me there, that's Woodlands Drive, which was formerly known as Blythswood Drive, because it was the Campbells of Blythswood, and that was the left wing. That was as far as the ground went. So like this lane here, up here, Rangers played up there. Rangers played on the ground up there. Moses McNeil played up here. Moses McNeil scored up here. But we played the 1st Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers in the first round of the Scottish Cup in 1875-76, and we beat them 7-0. It was practically a home game for them, so that was quite a result. And I saw, glancing through the results, that we had 2 more games against Rifle Volunteers, and the last one was against 3rd Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers, who of course became 3rd Lanark. And I thought, please let the middle one be against the 2nd Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers. That'd be really good. But it wasn't. It was a replayed game. We played 3rd Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers twice because we beat them. I don't know if Cathkin Park or the first Cathkin Park was on the go at that point. I need to check that, but we definitely beat them on their own patch. But it was protested. It was protested because Rangers had kicked off in both halves. We'd kicked off in both halves of the game. We'd taken centre at the start of each half of the game. So I don't know what happened with the VAR, the Victorian auditory referee or whatever back in the day. But Morocco, Senegal, we feel your pain, guys. We feel your pain. It happened to us 150 years ago, where the game get replayed, but some sort of compromise or concession, whatever. It get replayed here at Burbank at Rangers ground at the time, and they beat us 2-1. They beat us 2-1 in our own patch. The old third Lanarkshire Rifle Volunteers, but Moses McNeil scored. Moses McNeil has scored. He's been up and down that. I mean, it would be getting different in his day. I dare say he come back to have a look at this in later years once these beautiful tournaments have been built up on it. But Moses McNeil has plied his trade up here, and of course Moses McNeil was Rangers' first man cap for Scotland, first Rangers player cap for Scotland. He was capped against Wales. I find some significance in that, some poetry in that way. Rabbi Matondo being capped for Wales. If it was announced yesterday, that's really annoying. I'm hoping it was just announced today. That'll be on the 150th anniversary. Rabbi Matondo, can he get a game for Rangers? We keep forgetting he's actually playing for Rangers, and here he is getting a cap for Wales for their upcoming World Cup playoff matches under Craig Bellamy. And Moses McNeil, one of the Gallant pioneers, one of the founding fathers of Rangers, capped for Scotland against Wales. And there's Rangers players today. Finlay Curtis being capped for Scotland now that he's gone to Kilmarnock, and it's always the same, isn't it? It's always the same. I mean, you can't get a game for Scotland if you're playing for Rangers or Celtic, but the minute you go to Steve Clarke's Kilmarnock, he's all like that, you're straight into the Scotland team. He's on loan, you know what I mean? He's getting absolutely ridiculous, but good luck to Finlay. Well done to him for getting a cap in the upcoming friendlies against Japan, and is it Japan and Curacao that we're playing in these upcoming friendlies? I'm going to one of them, so I better get myself sorted out. I can't go to the Japan game, so I've not been thinking about it too much because that really, really hurts me. I've got a 50th on that night, and I can't go to see Japan for the first time in my life at Hampden. But this is where Rangers 150 years ago today, it is contended that we played our last ever match at Burbank, our last match on the north of Glasgow as a home venue. We moved to Kinning Park from here. We definitely played Clydesdale, drew 0-0 with them, as I say, in the last day of that season. A lot of friendlies we played that season, mostly friendlies. But the Founders Trail, where I'm getting half this information from, the Rangers Founders Trail. I've never been on the actual trip. I've never done the tour, but that's where I'm getting most of my information from here. They say that it was here against Clydesdale, the 0-0 draw. It was our last match at Burbank, whereas McElroy and Ferrier, Rangers, the complete record, another invaluable, so important source. They say that was away from home, that game against Clydesdale on the 18th of March, that 0-0, but we played Lennox. We lost 1-0 to Lennox in February in 1876, and that was our last game here at Lennox, as in Bobby, as in Celtic won the European Cup in 1967, a year that we'll be bringing up a bit later in this podcast. But it's hard to know, but no, it feels right if it were 0-0, like our first ever game as a club. Rangers' first ever game was a 0-0 against Calendar. We won the third division. We were 0-0 against Montrose, and of course, one of the greatest moments of my life is finally seeing Rangers. I always have to say, I'm really annoyed at the fact I was born when Rangers. I was like 2 years old when Rangers won the Cup Winners' Cup, so I can't say it was the first time in my life I saw us in a European final, but it's the first time I remember about it when we got to Manchester in 2008. But we did that via an unbelievably dramatic, long, intense 0-0 in penalties against Fiorentina. So 0-0 quite significant, but there you go. This is supposed to be where Rangers played their. We definitely did. This is where the Burbank ground was. So only here for a season. Apparently, Rangers fans stopped coming here in great numbers. They wanted the Rangers to move, and we did move to Kinning Park, which I think is where Clydesdale played. I think Clydesdale were at Kinning Park, and we went in there after them, and they leased that out to us. I don't know. I've been to a couple of Glasgow Hawks games. The last half hour of them getting in for nothing, like a cheapskate arm, and a couple of recent Saturdays. Didn't realise. No, the Ackies became. They leased this ground out to Rangers. So I was being staunch even when I didn't realise I was being staunch going to the rugby recently. But there you go. It's 150 years ago today. I thought I'd just mention that. Come down here and do a wee bit of kind of dynamic, out in the street, hardcore. I'm waiting for some sort of the Founders Trail. Probably going to come down here. They'll be marking the anniversary. They'll be getting into it. I think McElroy and Ferrier are probably going to turn up and nail the smoke bombs. It's all going to go off. It's going to be absolutely mental. Two top firms when it comes to Rangers history, or two top ultras firms when it comes to Rangers history. But I like taking a wee journey along here, about a 2-second walk for a normal person, not a fat old git like myself, from the site of our old stadium, our old ground at Burbank. There's a good, if you look it up on, I think, Wikipedia, and just go in and look up Rangers 1870s, or put in Rangers 1875, 1876, it brings up all seasons of the 1870s, and you can go in and at one point it lists our home stadium as Burbank for that one season. Click on that, and I think you eventually get the photograph. I think it might be in the Gallant Pioneers book as well, but it can definitely be found on the internet. That photograph of Burbank, just the fence on the big field. This all used to be fields, kids. And you can see the church spires in the distance that are still there on Great Western Road. But hi, how you doing, folks? This is your Fat Eck. I wanted to talk to you about the St Mirren game, then have a wee peek forward towards Aberdeen game on Saturday night, and a wee discussion of various other tidbits of Rangers news that have been coming to us since the final whistle in Paisley. But I ended up watching that BBC 3-part documentary, all 3 parts of it, on the BBC iPlayer, BBC Scotland, about ultras, ultra culture in Scotland, and it made me, I don't know, I think there's a lot in there that requires to be discussed, and I can't quite stop thinking about it. A lot of it hurt me, a lot of it made me feel really good as a Rangers supporter, and really hopeful for young men in general. And of course there was the usual kind of characterisation of Rangers as far-right thugs. Maybe I'm taking that too far, but it definitely it got under my skin a wee bit, and that's something I'll try to put right in my own wee way if I possibly can. Reaction / preview / discussion pod coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet live on the Gersnet YouTube channel every Friday 9 PM, every Sunday 9:30 PM. My name's Alec Anderson. If you want to catch a star, then walk my way. Here we are. Sorry, I can't even get through that song. I'm going to start crying. This is 19 Rupert Street. I'm standing, this is Rupert Street here. We can see number 19 there, but that's where Sandy Denny and Alex Campbell recorded their version of John Martin's Fairy Tale Lullaby. That's number 19 Rupert Street, and if you look that up, Fairy Tale Lullaby, Sandy Denny. She later became the lead singer of Fairport Convention. You look that up on YouTube, and it will bring up a picture of young Sandy Denny when she was a young woman, and it says on it 19 Rupert Street, because this is where the version that you're listening to in that YouTube clip was recorded. And at the end of it, just right at the very end of it, as the guitar silences, you just hear, "Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. It's really beautiful." So, and that's Alex Campbell. It's the only time you hear him, apart from his guitar, all the way through it. It's all part of the kind of British folk revival. It was John Martin had put it on his London Conversation album from 1967. I'm getting this from Graham Thompson's book, Small Hours, the Long Night of John Martin, who was a kind of blues, jazz and folk artist that I'm kind of obsessed with. Not obsessed with in any way. In fact, look, there you go. That's not actually 19 Rupert Street. It's the one next door, but it's not a Palestine flag up there. See, if Rangers had just stayed here, if we just stayed here, maybe this is why our supporters wanted us to move away for the West End. Things would have been all right. If you want to catch a star, then walk my way. I will take you where the night is always day. If you want to follow me, then you can try. We can maybe catch a rainbow and teach it to fly. We can maybe catch a rainbow and teach it to fly. Do you think there was any kind of imbibing, any talking going on when that song was written by John Martin? But it became a staple of the British folk scene in the late 1960s, and Sandy Denny, she recorded her version of it here, quite a famous version amongst folkies. And so, appropriate enough, Sandy Denny, she died at the age of 31, really tragically, in 1978. I'll not get into it, it's real tragic circumstances. Really a hard and terrible life, Sandy Denny, totally one of life's victims. And why is it always the same way with folk with such a beautiful voice? And she died a week before, like 8 days before Rangers secured the 1978 league title. And the guy that was playing the guitar in there's Alex Campbell. He was a absolute doyen of the British folk revival, 50s into 60s, but he was at loggerheads with Mr. Ewan McCall, no, Kirsty McCall's dad. If you know anything about the folk scene in Britain in the 50s, 40s, 50s and 60s, communist Ewan McCall, and he thought that the folk tradition should be, anybody who's singing folk songs in Britain should only be singing songs from their own region, not even from their own country, not even just from Britain, but from their own area of Britain. It's kind of taken after John and Alan Lomax when they recorded all the blues singers and that, the folk songs of the States, and he get really good, but of course, he was married, wasn't it, like all good communists, like all folk are totally hardcore in their beliefs behind the scenes. He was well at it. It was Ewan McCall, and he was having an affair with Peggy Seeger, Peter Seeger's brother. And because she was American, she came over to the States, she was going to get sent back over. She didn't have a visa, and she only got a visa if she was married, so she couldn't marry Ewan McCall because he was married to somebody else. But he wanted her to stay in the country, they had to stay together, and they were recording all sorts of seminal albums and doing all sorts of amazing stuff for the left wing and also for the folk music scene. And it ends up Alex Campbell, who at that time was busy pals with Ewan McCall, he's like, I'll marry her. I married her convenience to get married in Paris. She was already like 7 months pregnant or something like that to Ewan McCall, and the guy that married the priest or the minister, whoever who married them in Paris, was lecturing Alex Campbell on the fact that he needed to, it's all on Wikipedia this, there's no great research on here, but he was lecturing Alex Campbell on the fact that he needs to, behave himself and make an honest woman of this young woman that he's got into so much trouble, and they all thought it was hilarious and that, so she got to stay in Britain and just moved back to London to stay with Ewan McCall, who'd be good about lecturing people. Amazingly important to the folk revival, Ewan McCall, but he was good about lecturing folk and how they should be sticking to songs from their own region, whereas Alex Campbell was like most of Edinburgh was kind of go along with the Edinburgh folk scene was kind of go along with Ewan McCall. This is according to Graham Thompson's book, and the Glasgow folk scene was just doing its own thing. It was just really enjoying itself. It was far less straight-laced, and they were determined to sing songs from not even their own continent and not even their own style. They would do jazz, they would do blues, all sorts of American stuff. And so maybe it's all going to go off here. Maybe it's all going to go off here as well, because this is Alex Campbell, who stayed there in 19 Rupert Street. He was known as, he was the head of what became known as the Campbellites. And I wonder if he's related to the Campbells of Blythswood. I think Colin Harper, who's also a famous writer about folk music, the folk scene and blues, etc. He's only a bit older than me, he's still on the go. He said that Alex Campbell was a melancholic and hard-travelling, he was a troubadour basically. He started the whole troubadour thing. The folk revival would never have happened without guys like him. But no wonder he was melancholic, because both his parents and his sister died of tuberculosis or something like that when he was younger. So he was like, I'm going to sing and it makes me feel good. And I want to sing Mr. McCall. So I wonder if that's going to go off. If they've got ultras as well, non plus ultra. There is no one greater. There is no, you can't get any better than this. Non plus ultra. That's where the extreme version. And I'm talking about counterculture there, but of course it's subculture we want to talk about. And the one thing about Alex Campbell was the most minor thing of all. He died a year younger than me. I'm getting to that age. He died on the 3rd of January 1987, and 3rd of January 1987 is the day that I fell out with casual culture, that I decided it was a bit much. It wasn't really for me. That's a day I've talked about it plenty of times, so I'm just trying to put it out there as showing, A, I am in no hard case and never have, and the one time I pretended I was, I soon found out I wasn't. But B, I get where the young guys are coming from. We've all been there. When it comes to a bit of misbehaviour on the park, I've told you this before, Rangers were supposed to be playing Motherwell at Fir Park, and I was tagging along with the ICF. I'm an older Celtic fan, a guy like an adult. I would only be 17 at the time, and an older Celtic fan that October, like 2 or 3 months earlier, had taken my scarf off me on the train coming back from Glasgow, didn't he? And I was like, I can get a scarf off and all that. I was trying to avoid trouble and that, and it just pissed me off so much that I thought, I need to go and battle Celtic fans. I need to. When you're young, you're 17-year-old, and you're searching for identity. It's a big, scary world. So I temporarily joined the ICF. And that's all we had no day, where it was just, the gear looks good, you're wearing fashionable gear, and the brotherhood is there, but it's all about fighting. And I was realising I was just there really for the gear and the brotherhood. I was having to fight, just as I say, to walk the streets of Ardrossan, to have to do it going to the football, which was still regarded as a big day out then. I say it's quite it's an aspirational thing, going to football every week, where us kind of folk come from, folk from my socio-economic background. And we went to Parkhead. The Rangers game got postponed at the last minute, and I was in the train station with kind of following the ICF. I was watching that wee boy Jaden, the 10-year-old that his mum takes to follow the Ultras at Spartans and at Hibs. I was watching him in that documentary last night thinking, been there, there's that need to, you're totally bedazzled by any older guys who look like they're a bit wild and can handle themselves, a bit trendy, and so I did all that, and I went along to Parkhead, and I've told you this before, all too recently, when talking about the trouble at Ibrox in that Scottish Cup game, how I realised there and then, no, that's not going to happen. We were singing the sash on the Celtic end and nearly get killed. Only the Polis that saved us, and then we get thrown out the ground eventually altogether. Bill Priest, and I just thought, this is not for me. I don't like this. But that's all I had when I was a kid. And that was the day. That was the day actually Alex Campbell died. Don't know if he died here. No, he died in Denmark. I think he died in Copenhagen. But he was here, and I don't know. It's all linked to my head as far as I'm concerned. Other things that Rangers fans can be interested in, a wee bit of folk music and a bit of silly, get a bit of grass into you, get a bit of airy fairy music going, and just chill out in another way. I mean, John Martin, who recorded that song, is one of the most hard-living, nasty bastards ever to walk the face of the earth. Just not a pleasant person at all. Somebody you definitely don't want to be. So you can't really judge folks' motivations by their outward occupations or outward spare time interests. And I watched this. Alright, we'll talk about football. Okay, we'll talk about football. St Mirren, bit of a struggle the other day. So now that it's all kind of sunk in that we won the game, we're 3 points off the top of the table. Still a lot of Rangers support still slagging the performance, and I can see why. We didn't look as if we were particularly up for it. Missed a lot of chances, but I can't help myself getting more and more optimistic about the fact that we're up the top end of the table. We're 3 points off the top. So, bye Burbank. So what's inspiring me to optimism? Well, it's just that natural optimism you have as a football supporter. You're 3 points off the top of the table, and there's only 8 games to go. That's less games for us to fuck up, and it actually feels just now like, just don't fuck up, and there's a good chance you'll win the title. You think about it, the terrible miss that Shermiti has, and he always has those kind of misses against these kind of teams. That's fair enough, but you think that should have been a goal. The penalty that we absolutely should have had, the handball by Alex Gogic in the first half, that absolutely should have been a penalty. It was the comparison with the game at Dens Park where Simon Murray was penalised for exactly the same thing. In fact, a less threatening version of the same thing in terms of an opposition attack, if you think about it. And also, of course, the penalty that John Sterling gave away against Celtic at Ibrox in the league game recently. That was definitely a penalty. That could be 3-0. We'll get the offside goal that we scored. If the lines are drawn a bit differently, or I'm not really into that whole thing about drawing the lines differently. The lines are the lines. But if Tello Asgard had smaller feet, or just held himself back for a minute, or if Mikey Moore had actually taken the chance himself, which I think I was quite pleased to see Scott Allen mention that as well. A guy who knows how to pass, a guy who knows how to pass the ball. But I think it was Peter Lovencrantz, sorry, who was saying on Sports Scene, should be shooting. I think that was my instinct at the time as well. It could quite easily have been 4-0. I know it wasn't. That's not what football's about. It's about what you do, not what you could do. But when you think about what we've been through the past couple of weekends, I know we're getting the weeks off in between times. I know we're getting the midweeks off, sorry, in between times for professional footballers, etc. But it must be messing with our mind. It must really be messing with the Rangers players' minds, all the things we've been through this season. The same way it's messing with our nerves. 1 minute optimistic, 1 minute it all seems on, the next minute pessimistic, the next minute it all seems as if we're going to win nothing this season. But I think they've had a lot to contend with emotionally and physically, really going hard at it 2 weeks in a row. We saw the effort they put in two Sundays in the trot against Celtic and getting, I wouldn't say nothing against them, because that point that we've obviously won could end up being invaluable. The point that we won in the league game against Celtic recently could end up being totally invaluable towards us winning the title. You win the title, every point that you won is invaluable. Notice the dog owners, dog fouling prohibited. Now I'm going to get out of the way of this person that's going to knock me down here. But we also, I think there's a thing about league title winning teams. I was talking about this in the reaction pod on Sunday, where you expect certain things. You expect league title winning teams to look a certain way, certain things to be happening. Like, for example, one of those things is big long runs of convincing victories. Now, we've not had a particularly long run of convincing victories, but it gets a little spine going. There's a little backbone. Psychologically, you can look back on it and go, yeah, we went in that long run. We can do that again. 8 games, maybe we won 8 successive games in the kind of November, December into January period. And we've got that. We might be with 2 clean sheets in a row now. We might be starting that kind of run again at this particular point in time. Just at exactly the right time. And I think, well, but there's usually games that you play in league title winning seasons where it's all spectacular, the whole crowd's going crazy, it feels like a different atmosphere, the optimism is through the roof, it's like explosions of joy and euphoria, it feels like something special's happening. Well, I think we've had that a few times. Against Dundee, never mind away to Celtic, obviously, New Year, we beat them 3-1, that was phenomenal. But Ibrox against Dundee, we're 1-0 up for most of the game, and then we eventually get 2 goals in injury time as the results coming through from Tynecastle that Hearts and Celtic have both dropped points. They've drawn 2 other title contenders. That was phenomenal. That was a really special Sunday afternoon, that one. And then, of course, when we beat Hearts 4-2, big Trimiti hat-trick, place was going absolutely crazy. I've not heard a goal celebration like that from the Rangers support, that level of noise that we got after Trimiti's first goal. It was actually an own goal. The first goal we scored that game since Richard Gough equalised for 9-man Rangers against 10-man Celtic back in 1988, or 87 it would be. So that was pretty special, and although we didn't end up beating Celtic, we gave it away. The 2 each game in the league recently, the first 50 minutes of that game were absolutely sensational, and that's the other thing you expect from a team that's going to win the league, that's going to do something special in a season. You want to see great goals and significantly entertaining, significantly spectacular moments of actual technical ability, and we've definitely seen that this season. I mean, Yusuf Chermiti, that's the goal of the season straight away. Even the build up to it, I thought was phenomenal. It was so electric. And the second goal we scored was different class as well. And of course, there's his hat-trick against Hearts. Was talking about that header. It was pretty unique. Scott Olsen puts on his head. And I know we're talking about a lack of consistency of performance, but I think you can actually put that up against a lack of. I think we get kind of caught up a lot of time as football supporters. We want to see the same players playing the same position every week, and they all need to be great. We think that's consistency, but consistency, of course, is using your squad properly and just getting the results. The consistency of results is what matters. We're not getting that quite yet, but when you think about Danny Rule coming in at first and he plays 3 centre-halves, we go 5 at the back basically because he has that tester game. He gives us our own head away to Brann and Bergen in the Europa League. We get Gob 3-0 going on 10, and it's like, right, okay, I need to do something here. And he plugs up at defence, and we're kind of clawing out one goal wins and starting to keep clean sheets and start to keep it tidy at the back. And then he's eventually moved to he's gone 4-2-3-1, and then he's doing this 4-2-2-2, which is a 4-4-2, unbelievably flexible, changing all the time. And I think a lot of boys get in touch. And thanks to everybody who gets in touch on the comment section. It really is. It's probably the best. It's the most competent bit of this entire podcast. Go in there and read the comments. Don't listen to me rabbiting on. That's where you get the best stuff on the Fat Egg podcast. A lot of boys getting in touch just saying, I don't want to see Gassama. We can't keep trying to play Gassama on the right. As we've just been saying, we can't keep playing Skov Olsen on the right. He's not got his match fitness yet. He's not living up to his price tag. It was the same thing with Chermiti. You can definitely say Chermiti would have to do something. You'd have to score basically a hat trick per half from the remaining 8 games to justify his price tag. But that's not what it's about. It's about making sure we can win the league. And he's only got 9 goals. They're on the league, but they're bloody important. It's against top the opponents that we're actually competing with for the title. He scored 8 of those 9. So we've then gone, I think on Sunday, it was notable. There's a few folk have pointed out in the comments, of course, that Nico Raskin get pushed up to play as more of an 8, which is definitely his role. And I thought he was our man of the match. Not everybody has agreed that Alex Gogic was the man of the match for the whole game. But Nico Raskin getting pushed up was involved in everything, including the goal that we scored, and it was fantastic. These little changes that make all the difference. It was fantastic in terms of it got us the 3 points. You then, I think, if you want to be cynical about it, if you want to be cynical about Rangers winning this league, why should we believe Rangers are going to win this league? I think, just think about it as a lot of money grabbers just passing through, and suddenly, if you can append the cynicism to after us winning the title. We're only winning the title because these guys are just trying to follow their careers. That's fine. I think it's really believable. I think if having, after what he did at Sheffield Wednesday, the fact he's worked for RB Leipzig, Bayern, two of the most respected coaching institutions on the planet, and of course the German national team, which is arguably the most respected coaching institution on the planet in terms of the last 70 odd years or whatever. He's worked for all them, then he goes to Sheffield Wednesday in his first gig, and he miraculously avoids relegation with them in the first season, and then gets a much higher placing than they were ever expecting in the second season amid financial meltdown. And he comes to Rangers when we were an absolute nightmare under Russell Martin, which he's been explaining this week. Russell coming back out or hiding. I think the fella was on the verge of a nervous breakdown probably by the time he left Rangers, and I hope he's fully rested up. Not the best in his next endeavour, but what a mess it was for us at the end of October. Danny Rowe comes in and wins a title with Rangers. I think he's away. I think he could easily be going in the summer, if not back to Germany, then certainly to maybe even the Premier League, the Championship. He's got promotion hopefuls in the Championship are written all over him, Danny Rowe, because obviously the English Championship's sometimes I think it's the second richest league on the planet, but it's certainly far richer than most leagues on the planet, so he could be tempted away to that, or if just back to Germany. There's certainly opportunities opening up there, and Danny Rowe, I don't think he's always talking about getting to visit his family every now and then, so anytime he mentions his family, it's like, they're up there visiting, it's like a holiday or something. I don't think he's putting down any roots here, and he is a young manager, and I can see that. I think Big Chermiti is definitely going. He's done it. It doesn't matter if we can slag him not, and if nobody able to score against St Mirren and Livingston and all that, but as far as the show reel is concerned, as far as there's obviously a kind of appetite for a player like him amongst the sporting directors and technical directors of world football. They just look at the stats and do the whole Moneyball thing. I think they'll just look at the goal he scored against Celtic, the hat-trick he scored against Hearts, and go, that'll do, that's fine, we're going to get in there. I think we'll definitely at least get our money back on Chermiti. Emi Fernandez, I think he's now approaching, the fact he's getting capped by Nigeria, he's now being capped by Nigeria for a tournament getting played, a friendly tournament getting played in the international break. That's just increases the comparison with Calvin Bassey, which is the most kind of striking, amazing transformation I've ever watched in a Rangers player who went from bomb scare to just being downright explosive. Emi Fernandez is on that kind of fast track, even quicker, because obviously Calvin Bassey was there for a season before he properly exploded onto the scene in 2021-2022, but he'll be away as well, Fernandez. I know we've got a lot of players, Rangers Review and all that have dealt with this as well recently this week. They were going to have a lot of players that are going away, a lot of players that will go on loan that won't be back next season, but I think if you just look upon it as Danny Rowell just wanted to win the league with Rangers. You avoid relegation for the English Championship. You then win the league with Rangers up in Scotland. It's a kind of, it almost looks like a deliberate, very German, very pragmatic, very organised progression, career progression for himself. So, if we're just part of his story, that's absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I think it's on, folks. I think it's definitely on. It always has been. And it wouldn't surprise me if we start playing better game by game in this run. In my snagging items, my post-match reaction pod on Sunday, what did I get wrong in that so much? First of all, I was saying that Nico Raskin, it was what a fantastic assist to see two Romans coming in at the back, especially when Nico Raskin is such a small player. He's over on the other wing, and he's curling that ball right onto two Romans' feet, right onto two Romans' roll. He's run. I just said roll because he's like a Rolls Royce, two Romans. But no, I think it was actually it was perfect kind of heading, Chermiti heading height on the penalty spot that he played that ball, and it just ran past. Richard King has totally let it go for St Mirren, and it's gone over him. I don't think he did mean it at all, but he's putting the ball into a good area, so it got there. I don't think the assist was deliberate from Nico. I got that wrong. I got so many things wrong, no doubt I always do. But what was it? There's another major. A couple of things I got wrong there. I guess it's what happens. You try to make it dynamic. You try to get out there. You try to be an ultra. You try to film the young boys letting off the rockets and all that, and doing the pitch invasions. You don't have my notes in front of me. I can't remember off the top of my head all the things I got wrong. There was so much. I didn't mention the fact that how badly St Mirren played. That was something. St Mirren always a major problem for us in Paisley. But they were bad. They were actually pretty poor. It wasn't a case of losing Stephen Robinson had made them play any better. I don't think it was like old manager has gone bounce. They didn't have any of that at all. St Mirren, I think they only had one shot on target. A lot of that's down to us, obviously, but they weren't up to much to St Mirren. So if you're in the camp that thinks Rangers shouldn't be getting ahead of themselves, we're still absolutely garbage and we're no chance of winning the league, then that's something you can definitely throw into your argument. I kept using the term. I was talking at the beginning about how a few Celtic fans get in touch with me, being kind of just that kind of militant way where your fans were on the pitch at the end of that Scottish Cup game, ours were just enjoying themselves, and you're all Nazis, and I'm not into the two sides thing. One side's not as bad as I've been getting a whole lot of that stuff, which is, even if it's not religiously sectarian, it's just totally sectarian. It's dividing two sets of people who are into the same thing, football, into very different camps of behaviour and what have you. And I kept using the phrase real world. I live in the real world. I don't mind talking to Celtic fans who stay in the real world, as in they've been out and they've learned a bit about the world and they know how to kind of compromise and get things into perspective. But living in the real world is a very kind of patter that you get from your Andrew Tates and Nigel Farages and all that. It's always common sense. It's just common sense. I mean, wake up, grow up, live in the real world, while they pretend that the only thing wrong in the world is that there's folk coming from war-torn countries who want to come over here and make a go of it. That's the thing at the root of all evil, that it's only men of a certain religion who've got dodgy views about women and girls. Anybody who's been watching the news any part of their life knows that's completely not the case. In fact, that's the one thing that most so-called white Christian men have got in common with the Asian community, the Asian men that they like to vilify. Turns out that's the one thing that actually unites them, because every single reform candidate and so many Tommy Robinson acolytes all seem to end up being up on very dodgy sexual abuse charges. So I don't like this living in the real world. I was just meaning the guys who are not going to go about try to make out that their support is perfect, that their fans are perfect, and guys who've had to go and work for a living and mix with Celtic fans and mix with Rangers fans, and we all just have to go in the world. And that maybe brings me on kind of clumsily to my next subject, the thing that got me out in the streets today. Want to make this a kind of pyro-based podcast. I saw Blair McNeil. He's got like 76,000 followers, and he's got like 14 million views. I've got 14 views. So this is obviously the way to go. Make it all about the ultras. And I watched that documentary, and there's the things that scare you when there's a documentary on BBC Scotland about the Fitba. Number one, that Tom English, Michael Stewart, or that guy who supports Stenhousemuir for 2 decades, starting at the end of the 2.5 decades that I'd already been supporting Rangers or whatever, and he just sits next to a pint all the time, but it looks like there's no way he's drank a pint in his entire life. With the kind of guys on a documentary, you get a bit worried about how Rangers are going to come out of this documentary, and I think it didn't really live up to my worries, so to speak, until the third episode. There was a little. You've got to factor in. You've got to take account of your own bias, your own worry when it comes to these things. And there's definitely an attitude amongst the Rangers supporters, or I think it's been borne out. There's evidence to say that BBC Scotland Pacific Key has a bit of a problem with us. We'd officially fallen out with them for years, of course, only just back to kind of talking to them and allowing interviews from BBC Scotland. But I was a bit worried about it, but I think it turned, for the most part, it was a really worthwhile, investigative, explorative kind of essay about not so much the ultras, but about masculinity, the young men in Scotland today. It did the kind of jump cuts and the flashy, the kind of blitz of colour and the riot of noise and all that, and lots of jump cut stuff at the beginning, which was obviously legacy media trying to get on board with your Blair McNally's and the YouTubers, social media types, try to get back on board with that and reap a bit of that audience. It wanted to be. It was like, it must be for the young guys that follow the fit of the day and want to be an ultra. It was like that documentary, the infamous documentary about the West Ham ICF in the mid-80s, going to Old Trafford in the FA Cup, and I remember my pals at school and I'm like, did you watch that thing about the ICF? So that's how the Rangers casuals ended up unoriginally calling themselves the ICF. I was front and centre. I'm always really good at the publicity and the writing and stuff like that, so I get quite heavily involved in us changing our name to the HMS, not Her Majesty's Service, HMS. So that was quite good, but I don't think it ever really took off. We always just Rangers ICF, which I thought was a bit shit, since we're named after another firm altogether. But I remember watching that back in the day, and you get on the casual gear for Christmas. Oh, I thought, like 15, 16, I just, last year it was Action Man, this year I'm getting the Adidas Gazelle, and I'm going to go fighting. So I think there's a bit of that to it. It went so the young ultras to watch this stuff because Blair McNally, the fellow who's Scotland's top football podcaster and a central part of the 3 episodes, was telling us he just gets folk all over the world giving his YouTube channel the views because they want to see the wee ultras, and it just looks like there's a graduation process in operation there, where you'll go to your local kind of junior team or non-league team, and then up at the bottom of the league pyramid in terms of Spartans, and you just enjoy being an ultra. Get out there expressing yourself as a young man when you're kind of pre-teen, and then after that you graduate to go into actual league fit with your big team. And there was a wee boy, Jaden, the focus on him, which at first you thought was a beautiful kind of example of football passion, how it hits all young men, or a lot of young men, working class men in Scotland, but it became a kind of total, a piece of great realism, made magical realism by his mum taking him to the games at Spartans. She's got to come because she pays me in. She gets me food and stuff like that. He's 10-year-old, you know what I mean? But it was, she's a single mum, just doing whatever she can. It's that horrific situation of you love your way into bits, and she obviously did. It's not always a situation when it comes to parents, but she loved her way into bits, and wants him to enjoy himself. And especially as a single mum, you don't really get first-hand experience of what it is to be a young man, so you're trying to let him have what you think he needs to have, but at the same time you must be absolutely shit scared at all the different ways it can go wrong for young men. And I thought it was really worthwhile that Andrew Tate was getting mentioned. And Andrew Tate got mentioned, I think, the first time by our very own Gavin Bruce. I don't know Gavin, I know him through Rangers Twitter. I think we had a few back and forth on Rangers Twitter, mostly convivial, I would say. I think Gavin's an actual communist. He's certainly a bit more left-wing than even me. Although I don't know if that's the case anymore, because with the Overton window moving so far to the right, if you want to be centrist, you're basically a fascist. So Gavin's definitely got a point there, but he's a classic fella. He's, I think he's been in the army as well. I don't know him to talk to or anything like that. I've never really had any kind of direct contact with Gavin, except maybe a couple of replies or likes or whatever on social media. But it was such a relief to see him there, Just want to thank him, to be honest, if he ever is desperate enough to watch my podcast. But I'd like to thank him for representing, for properly representing. He's even obviously doing the gym thing as well, and he's got the Peaky Blinders style for the young guys, so he was totally outstyling all the other wee guys for Celtic and Stenhouse and that looked like their mothers got them ready and sat them down there. And he was the man who, thank God, announced he's a Rangers supporter. You know, to say what team they supported, and he was doing it properly. He was the guy giving the most intellectual exploration of the whole situation for young men and the need for community and how that's dying. Well, in the whole 3 parts of that documentary, because see, I dread how we're going to be portrayed in this, and it did happen. I thought it was quite interesting. It became like that. They'd be making this documentary for a year, and the timing of the mini riot we had at Ibrox, which I keep forgetting to mention, is the first time I have actually seen supporters on the pitch. 49 years nearly I've been supporting Rangers going to Ibrox, and that's the first time I've actually seen Rangers supporters getting on the pitch and to get violent, nominally to get violent anyway, and not a lot of actual violence happened, but that must have been a fantastically timed advert for this programme. You know, they couldn't have done that any better. Just 8 days before there's Scotland's biggest kind of incident with Ultras, and at the same time, I think it also worked out brilliantly for Rangers in terms of it showed one of the things that's been thrown at the Rangers pitch invaders from that game against Celtic the other week was that they're all wearing balaclavas, they're all wearing face masks and stuff like that. They're Ultras, and this programme was just showing you straight away there was all these kind of what do you call it? They call it a montage. All these montages of supporters or Ultras of every club in Scotland, even down to Kemlin and Common and Rangers and all that, with their face masks on. It's de rigueur. You've got to have the face mask. That's what makes you feel cool and all that. It's also what protects you for the police, protects you from getting charged maybe. But they all do it, including your Celtic casuals. This kind of stuff. I think Celtic deciding that last week was going to be the week that they wanted to open negotiations up again with the Green Brigade to get them back into cheer the team onto the title this season was pretty disgusting. Basically condoning the behaviour of their supporters in the stadium there, and it's just been portrayed as Rangers fans getting on the park, invading, wanting a fight. Celtic fans were just innocently celebrating. It's a hatchet job, so it was nice to see just a documentary that showed all the ultra culture. You've got to be transgressive, and I can't blame these wee guys. As I'm saying, I'm admitting myself at the start of this pod that I did all that kind of stuff. It was casuals, was the only way you could show your, I'll fight to the death for my club type. It's just basically too many hormones. It's the only way you could get it out of your system. It's the only way you could show your passion for your club and be part of that community. When I was a young man, when I was in my teens into my early 20s, and now it's the ultra thing, which seems slightly better. Something more creative as well, and they do bring a riot of colour to the place, and it's fantastic. They make Scottish football. They do make Scottish football so much better. I was scared at some point in the documentary they were going to make it like we were the first people ever to have ultras. The Motherwell fans inventing the Motherwell ultras inventing the Viking clap. That was lovely. That is definitely something to boast about. But I thought we're going to make it be the first one, but eventually they did mention the Italians and Gazzetta Italia 19, the Gazzetta Italia, Football Italia, the Channel 4 coverage. I had a lot of go at pies. I had a go at pies and Bovril, which I thought was fucking out of order. You know what I mean? That's sacrosanct as far as I'm making out Scottish pies are crap. The best pies in the world. We're the best fatty food providers in all of Western Europe when it comes to football nosh. So no, don't be having a go at that. I took severe umbrage to that. But I was over this scarf here. I got this, in Giro per l'Italia con l'Atalanta nel cuore. That's what it says on it. It's, I'm going all around Italy with Atalanta in my heart. We all saw that ultra culture came from the continent, and this idea it's quite a recent thing as well. It's maybe escalated recently and got more and more colourful. It's got a better involvement with the clubs, but it's been going on for nearly 20 years as far as I can remember. I remember the Blue Order. What happened to the Blue Order? Did they get subsumed into the Union Bears? And that's when I was already far too old to even care. You just naturally move on. You get older, you just want to. Apart from the weight I am, I would have a heart attack the second I jumped up and down. I was having a heart attack walking up and down these streets trying to show you Burbank. So getting into the Copeland Road and jumping up and down for one song, never mind the entire game would off me straight away. It's just part of your youth. You're burning off the young oats, youthful oats. But I remember it used to be the Blue Order, and then the Union Bears appeared and they were in the Broomlin. I remember like the 11 Davy Weir's Tifo. So that was when Davy Weir was playing. That's at least 16, 15 years ago when Davy Weir was playing for us. They'd 11 different Rangers jerseys with Davy Weir doing all the positions. It was fantastic. And the wee Tifo that said was it techno disciples or techno zealots or something like that. It was great stuff. I thought it was really interesting watching all this stuff. But so as far as I'm concerned, it's been going on for ages. It's grown arms and legs, and it's taken on a kind of character whole thing. And I see wee boys sitting, the bit I'm in, it's all old men and families in the main stand, because that's the stage of life I'm at just now. And you see wee boys that have been, there's a boy that his mum is taking him to the fitbahs. I really relate to the stuff with young Jaden, the Spartans and Hibs supporter. The Spartans and Hibs Ultra in that documentary, because there's a wee fella just sits along for me, and his mum always makes him leave 5 minutes early, and he's always miserable because she wants to get away to get the park, and she's obviously just bringing him to the fitbah, and she's done her bit, and she's not going to get caught up in the crowd, make her any later up the road. So he always have to get up to let them past, and he's gone from being up to like my knee, and now he's next season basically he's going to be looking down on me, quite literally. So it's a way of life. The young boys just they grow up within the football, and it's something they do. But I could see it coming. I could see that Motherwell fans, they're Ravenscraig, the Well boys, and it's phenomenal stuff they do, especially with the Motherwell supporters that have taken their own life and all that because they were denied the football, amongst other things. It really is social, it's caring, and that is the point was made a few times. I was so glad I made it in my own pod the week before, discussing the violence at Ibrox after that Scottish Cup game, how going to the football is actually a way to save lots of young guys. It might look a bit transgressive and a bit rough and all that, and it definitely does get really dangerous, and it definitely breaks laws the way the Ultras behave. But compared to other things that are going on in Scotland, it's the drugs, the drink, and there's, as was mentioned a lot of times in that documentary, Andrew Tate sitting there ready to turn you into an incel rapist. It's horrific. So get to the fitbah, and if the worst you're going to be is an ultra, then society will be so much better for it. But sorry, I'm completely losing the plot here. I need my notes when I start getting into something like this. But I saw that we're talking about Motherwell and how the Motherwell boys, the Motherwell Ultras will always mention Ravenscraig. And that's fantastic. There's a BBC Scotland documentary from, was it last year, a couple of years ago, about the miners' strike, and I wish to hell the whole bus full of guys, the guys that were done the miners' strike in the mid-80s, that were just living on scraps and having to steal food and stuff like that. Real basically hardcore Marxists, as far as Thatcher was concerned, just try to stick up for their community and their jobs. All Rangers supporters, they're all wearing the Rangers scarves and all that while they're standing there on strikes. I don't want this documentary doing that thing that always happens. We need Rangers to be the bogeyman, we need Rangers to be the Nazis, so everybody else can be sanctified with a sheen of kind of progressive protest in their actions. BBC Scotland, Pacific Key. And I could see little moments where it's like they're talking about Ravenscraig and the steelworks and all that, quite rightly, and they really should. But there's no mention Rangers. I mean, the main stand that I go to, the concourse of the main stand are like fucking Queen Mary. It's like an ocean-going liner. Could there be a more beautiful, more like the crisscross lattice work, the balcony lattice work at the front of the main stand at Archibald Leach? But it's a riveter's paradise. It's a living testament to the shipbuilding that made Glasgow and made particularly Rangers. That's not getting mentioned. That's an industry that's really struggled and what have you. It's caused a lot of deprivation when that get put to the cleaners, when that get put out of business. That wasn't getting mentioned at all. That's fair enough. You can only cover so many industries in that angle. But then we got to the third episode, and what I thought was going to happen happened. Lots of flashes, lots of jump cuts of good tifos at Ibrox, or the proper tifos at Ibrox, and they're discussing, they're showing Manpreet, who's a big friend of Rangers supporters on Rangers social media and that, but what a job he's done. Good stuff for the Partick Thistle supporters, the Partick Thistle Ultras, and they kept saying, the guy that's doing the documentary, there was a cup game against Celtic they were preparing for, I bet you're going to get gubbed you know, you're going to get gubbed, aren't you? I'm thinking, oh, is this the guy that's doing the documentary? I don't know, but his leanings and a woman who was really good in it. She was talking about men and fireworks. What is it with men and fireworks? You know, just go and stand in a field. She was, I think, she's a forensic psychologist, but by the end she was talking about, oh, we're so Calvinist in this country. And I'm thinking, what about Catholic guilt? You know, whereas if you're actually, you know, a Catholic, you might be thinking, you're saying this is a Calvinist country. You're writing off Catholicism, so you've got to be aware of your own biases. But it got to the bit, the third episode, instead of focusing on one of the many amazing Rangers tifos and floaters, I got that feeling like the floaters that we put together, especially this season, some of them have been absolutely magnificent. Like the Gladiator, when we're playing Roma and all that, they just focused, and it was the longest, I think, kind of rostrum camera moment of the whole documentary was that stupid fucking little banner that had been spray painted on somebody's ripped up bedsheet. It was totally nothing compared to what the Union Bears properly focus on, and the proper tifos, and it was the make woke foreign ideologies. I mean, it didn't even make the grammatical sense. I'm convinced to this day it was three different banners that stretched for the length of about half a dozen seats. I'm convinced to this day there was one missing. There was a banner missing that would have put it in. It would have made sense if it had all been together. But that got held. That was the focus. That was the main Rangers tifo. Didn't even amount. Could have been described as a tifo. I don't even remember what game it was. It was a midweek game. It was a European game that came out, and it got laughed at. It got laughed at by the Rangers support at large. It got destroyed on Rangers Twitter. Rangers social media absolutely destroyed it. We are no into this Nigel Farage pish, but that, and of course with the guys that keep visiting us from Chelsea or whoever they're coming for. I don't know who that is. And they've got the kind of SS insignia and all that going on their flags, real proper, unbelievably racist, genocidal stuff on their flag, which are blue and white, and I've never even noticed them at a game. And a lot of Rangers supporters will say this, and we'll get shot down straight away by Celtic fans. So this was the one thing they focused on. This was the one tifo, and it wasn't even a tifo that we were getting held up as. It was an exploration of the politics of the Ultras. I think by that point, luckily, it had been established that it is just young boys who want to burn off a lot of energy, and the real politics for them is getting right behind their club. But that was been held up, and then of course it was a half Rangers, half Lazio calling card. I was like fascists. I think I actually said fascists or SS. There was also a bit like Wraith Rovers fans had SS insignia on them. Wraith Rovers, what's going on there? You know, the Kirkcaldy clan. I don't know what was happening there, but there was a couple of Ranger stuff in there. That's it. There was a Charlie Kirk. There was a Charlie Kirk R.I.P. Charlie Kirk No Surrender banner. I never fucking saw that at Ibrox. I remember watching Charlie Kirk getting shot. I watched it on a loop. I was so happy to see that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching that cunt getting his neck blown wide open like a river of blood. It was total David Cronenberg stuff pouring out just seconds after he'd tried to make gun control a racist thing in his wee debating with Wayne's, which isn't a debate. So I was happy to see him die. The idea that there's Rangers supporters out there that stuck up for Charlie Kirk, there will be, but there's these kind of people in all supports. There was no mention of Celtic fans attacking what Celtic fans did with Mark Walters in 1988. But the idea was that 1888 Celtic were set up to help the disadvantaged, help the poor. So 100 years later, and I know it's something we would have done it first, and I know we had a go at mixed race striker Paul Wilson, who played for Celtic in the 70s. I know he got racist abuse from Rangers supporters. I'm, as I say, real world. I'm not trying to claim that we're whiter than white, but trying to make us blacker than black, or nastier than nasty. The bad boys. I knew it was going to happen at some point in this documentary. And there it was. The only thing I've got in common, I want us to have in common with Lazio, is Gaza, our love of Gaza, a world famous derby in which our enemies are really affiliated with Rome, and we're the only two clubs to have won the Cup Winners' Cup and not be able to defend it. So that's the only kind of thing I was at that Cup Winners' Cup final in '99, the last Cup Winners' Cup final. So that's the only kind of things I really want to have in common with Lazio. I had no idea there was any kind of stuff like that going on. The vast majority of Rangers supporters don't. We're not into that. So I felt I was uncomfortable with that. So I thank the Lord, even though I don't believe in him, that Gavin Brewis was on there sticking up for Rangers from a very, very left-wing point of view, and just sticking up for young men in general and the need for community. There are a few other things, a lot of things I want to say about that documentary, but I'm sick of his, and it's down to us. I mean, we did come on the park there, we can attack the Celtic supporters, but I explained that. I'm not happy with the fact that we did that, but I think it needed doing. Nobody was stopping the Hib supporters. I mean, they come on with real elation, an elation incomparable to Celtic's. Celtic have been winning everything for the last 20 years, so a Scottish Cup game against Rangers, that's the sixth time in 4 years they've put us out of cup competition. It wasn't exactly proper elation for Celtic. It wasn't a surprise at the end of that game, whereas Hibs winning the Scottish Cup for the first time in 114 years, that was the biggest trophy they'd won since the early 50s. Yeah, that was major for them, and the way they did it as well. So I was expecting them to be totally elated, come on the pitch, but they just kept coming. They just kept coming towards the Rangers supporters, and then eventually they're attacking our players and they're attacking our supporters. And same thing happened at Motherwell. With the Well boys come on the park. We had a restricted allocation when they beat us in the promotion relegation playoff in 2015, a year before, and they come on the park and just come over and attacked the Rangers supporters. Didn't do a single thing. We just sat there and took it. So I think when Celtic start coming on our pitch at Ibrox, it's our home pitch as well. We know where it's going to end up, and we know nobody else is going to stop it, and they're going to get a fantastic write-up, and they're certainly going to defend themselves in the media, Celtic PLC. But I think we had to do. I can't really blame these young lads, and I was glad that it was the Stenhousemuir fella from the Terraces or whatever it's called. Which I don't like the patter. I don't like the three of them that sit in the various folk that have the patter on that programme on the BBC Scotland on a Friday night. But their documentaries, the little documentaries they have in there are always amazing, and they're always fantastic. So it's not all good and bad, but he kind of comes across as get yourself. I mean, that's a good platform for you to start your career, but get yourself on Bridge of Lies. You've got the contacts at Pacific Key. Get on that, and Ross Kemp. Get on that, and have a word with him, because he's got contacts all through British media everywhere. He can maybe get you a wee leg up, get you onto Sky or something. I'll let you have the World Cup, but then really it's time he started making proper money. You've just started your media career. A tad disingenuous, the fella, I find, but he was mentioning the famous footage of the Inter supporters throwing a scooter after the top tier of the San Siro, Vespa, Lambretta, you make your mind up, and saying it's mental, it's mad, we loved all that, it's good. You can't bask in the beautiful transgression of supporters around the world, and you can't have Sky and Premier Sport would not be interested in Scottish football if you didn't have the old firm at the centre of it, and their fundamentalist supporters, myself included, who create this manic atmosphere. So the second it goes a wee bit overboard, you cannot then totally turn your nose up and start, where'd this come from? It's as if it's happening in a vacuum. You wanted it, you've got it, and you can't ask these young boys to be pitting on these tifos and all the effort they put into it, defending the name of the club as they see it, and then when we're actually getting opposition supporters or most hated rivals coming on our pitch and starting to get a bit wide, they're going to react. They're just going to react. You can't just turn that on and off. You can't. So I was happy that it all kind of ended up, the whole documentary. Basically, I'm not saying it justified or sanctified the actions that go too far. It was a lot of it was all about pyro, which even guys my age totally love the pyro. The effect is fantastic, but we know it's unsafe. We know it's dangerous. I thought the Aberdeen supporter who couldn't work out just a couple of seconds of madness, and that was me. I had to pay £7,000 in legal fees and all that. I thought we were never going to get back to the FITBA and all that. You took your Wayne to the FITBA and you ordered them online. You ordered 4 bits of pyro online. Wasn't it a few seconds of madness? Plus, who's stupid enough to think setting off the pyro when you're not in amongst the actual ultras isn't going to get the cops and the stewards on your back? But anyway, that was funny. That was actually quite funny. So it was. We got there in the end up. I think the timing of this documentary ultimately is fantastic for what happened at Ibrox last week. But again, it's there. Rangers are Nazis, Rangers are fascists, and everybody else's political leanings are pretty pure. That's total and utter shit. It's always, if you're punching somebody in the face or throwing pyro at somebody, as long as you're doing it in behalf of, Glasgow's poor, then you're fine, But if you're doing it on behalf of Nigel Farage, it burns a bit hard. It's total nonsense. That'll do me, folks. That's far too much. I've talked far too long, but I've covered the main things. I'll come back to you before Saturday's game. It's Saturday night. What a horrific kick-off time. I'll come back to you before that to have a wee chat about Danny Rowell's team. Obviously, we'll have a Danny Rowell's pre-match presser by then, and maybe talk a bit more about Russell Martin. What was the other kind of news? Oh, we're talking about going for a training camp, a hot weather training camp during the weeks that's leading up to the Scottish Cup semi-finals, which we won't be in. Chris Jack in Rangers Review reported this, and I saw it come up on my Twitter account. Just look at the reactions under it. I think it's fine. If that's what we want to do, if it's going to help, it's going to help. But just look at the traumatised reactions. Your training camps. It's the worst thing we can possibly do. We shouldn't be doing this, It's going to. It always costs us the title. It's not a winter break. It's going to be a spring break. You can't beat spring break. Talk to you soon, troops.